Alrighty, welcome to the 92nd edition of Before the Battle. My name is Nick Baldwin of BloodyElbow.com, and I'm joined as always by Jed Meshew of MMAfighting.com. Wesley Riddle of MMA Sucker has something going on, with school. He's busy. He is not here to preview UFC Fight Night Fresno this weekend and talk with Jed and I. But Jed, you are here. You never step down from a challenge, no matter what you have going on. Run a marathon 2 days before you're doing the show. What's going on?
Yeah, I just wanted a little more than Wes. I think everybody knows that. I'm just more committed to the cause of talking to our 3 fans that are out there watching. So, I think Wes would admit that too, and so it's okay. Everybody's okay with how things are shaking out here. Also,
Indeed.
I'm doing excellent. I know you and I talk about the weather sometimes whenever we're doing this podcasting thing. Just so you know, down here in Atlanta, Georgia, got a little bit of a winter advisory. Possibly going to get a little bit of snow tonight. So I know it's pretty cold down here. I know you don't know anything about that cold life, though.
No, I've never seen snow in my life.
Yeah, well, some people just live a sheltered existence up in the warm, balmy area of where is this? Winnipeg?
Yeah.
The Peg.
I just looked up Atlanta weather. It's 45 degrees Fahrenheit there right now. So for Atlanta standards, that's absolute shit.
Still chilly.
How is it snowing though? Like that's
It's
still
not snowing yet. It's
above.
overnight. Overnight, there's a potential. It's not even a guarantee. You just might get about a half inch.
All right. Well, I'm looking at the forecast. It's calling for. Oh, okay. So it's a low of 29. So technically, that is below freezing. Technically, snow. Scientifically, snow can be created in Atlanta, Georgia overnight. That is something that could happen. My prediction is it doesn't, but you'll have to.
I don't think it will either, but I'm just saying they're saying it might happen. It could happen. So, you're not the only one who has to deal with the frigid winter climates. Is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Again, come to Winnipeg and you'll deal with it more than one day out of a winter season.
No, thank you.
With that, let's move on. Let's talk about last weekend's show. I shouldn't say let's move on. Let's go back in time. Let's talk about these past 2 cards we had this past weekend. UFC 212. No, not 212. UFC 218. That was, of course, the first Aldo Holloway fight. We had the rematch. Aldo loses to Holloway. Holloway defends his featherweight title for the first time via 3rd-round TKO against Jose Aldo Jr., the longest reigning featherweight champion by a mile in the UFC and the greatest featherweight of all time, one of the best of we've ever seen. We also had the Ultimate Fighter 26 finale 1 day prior in Las Vegas. We had Nico Montano capture the inaugural UFC Women's Flyweight title with a decision win over Roxanne Modafferi. We're not going to talk about the fights. We never do here on the show, or recap the fights, I should say. If you want that, go check us out on the MMA Circus this past week. Cheap plug. But we will talk our typical results. Jed, what do you got for us results as far as our picks go, as far as DraftKings and Underdog Pick of the Week, and bonuses?
As far as our picks go, I'll start with the Tough 26 finale results. I am your picks champion with a sterling record of 6-4-1. Both you and Wes came in with 5-5-1s. The one, of course, being the Bennett. Why am I blanking on who Deandra Bennett fought? The draw. Fabian. There you go. The majority draw between Bennett and Fabian. My misses were Sanchez. All 3 of us missed Sanchez. Spicely, both me and Wes missed on Spicely. You had Gerald Mearshart taking that. Barb Honchak, all 3 of us missed on Barb Honchak with Lauren Murphy pulling the upset. And Roxanne Modafferi, all 3 of us missed on Roxanne Modafferi. Going from the gut, from the heart, kind of not it's the most logical pick ever. As far as our draw, Wesley Riddle and you both picked Whitmire. I told you both that you were wrong. I was correct in the end. You guys should always listen to me when I say that you're both wrong. But going on to our bonus selections that evening, I had a fairly good run on the bonuses too. I picked Montano Modafferi as fight of the night. It was your fight of the evening.
And it shouldn't have been, but
it should not have been, but it did take home the prize. Wesley Riddle had O'Malley Ware, came up short. You had Soto Johns. Obviously, that came up very, very short. As far as performances, I had Sean O'Malley and Eric Spicely. Neither of those hit. Wes Riddle had De La Rosa and Bennett. Neither of those hit. You, my good sir, had Bennett and Ostrovich. Neither of those hit. Though I will note that both of y'all's or your pick of Ostrovich totally would have been viable. She got an early submission in there for a bonus. Same with Wes's pick on De La Rosa. But your two performance winners were Gerald Mearshart and Brett Johns. Brett Johns had obviously probably the performance of the weekend if we're just going just how good you looked in one tiny bit with his instantaneous calf slicer over EBI veteran, a really well-respected grappler in Joe Soto, just instantly hit him with the calf slicer. That was quite an impressive performance. Our underdog picks, I came up with the win in the so by virtue of getting the fight of the night correct, I won our performance picks. And our underdog picks, I had Robertson, very first fight of the evening, the one I told you guys both to pick. She won. That's the only winner because Wes had Spicely as his underdog pick, and Nick, you had Roxanne Modafferi as your underdog pick. So really a good effort all around for me on the Tough 26 card. Just saying, except when it came to maybe you could argue where it matters. When it comes to the DraftKings team, I came in third place with 404.5 points. I had a very strong team in general, but Deanna Bennett's terrible draw, she only got 23 points in, really hurt my score. And Eric Spicely getting beat up by Joe Mearshart hurt me there as well. Nicholas, you came in second with 441 points. You had a solid team as well. O'Malley, Mearshart, Johns, big performance guys for you. Modafferi even scored a good amount of points. Barb Honchak and Ariel Beck did not do you too proud. Wes Riddle had a huge DraftKings team, 517.5 points. He had De La Rosa, Johns, Montano, and O'Malley, all with almost 3 digits apiece, if not more. Eric Spicely brought him down with 16.5. Taryn Ware also brought in 44 points for him. So that's all your Tough 26 results. Moving on to UFC 218. What do we have here? Oh, once again, your picks champion, two-time with a 10-3 record, your boy Jed Meshew. For the Tough 18, I also split that with Wes Riddle, who also went 10-3. But since I was previously holding the belt, we all know how draws work. T Wood got to keep his belt when he had a draw. I get to keep mine. Wes, sorry, no picks belt for you, my good man. Nicholas, you came up in the rear with an 8-5 record. My failures were Cowboy Oliveira. All three of us failed on that. Justin Gaethje, all three of us failed on that. And then I went with the underdog, Alistair Overeem. Missed pretty hard on that one. Hand up, that's on me. Wes Riddle, his misses were the Oliveira, the Gaethje fight. He also missed the Michelle Waterson fight. Much like the Robertson fight, I told you guys T. Storrs was going to beat Michelle Waterson. Neither of y'all listened. Y'all are both crazy. Nicholas, you missed on Courtney Casey, both Oliveira, Charles and Alex Oliveira, Michelle Waterson, and Justin Gaethje. Our performance bonuses, really bad showing for almost all of us here. Your fight of the night was Gaethje. Well, you were actually had 2 fight of the nights. There was no performance bonus given. Kind of a crock of shit, but whatever. Justin Gaethje versus Eddie Alvarez was one of your performances or one of your fights of the night, and Alex Oliveira, sorry. Too many Oliveira, sorry. Alex Oliveira versus Yancy Medeiros was your other fight of the night winner. Nicholas, you actually picked Gaethje Alvarez as your fight of the night, so you end up, by virtue of that, taking the performance of the bonus section.
For some reason, I thought you picked Gaethje as performance. Because I thought we had a thing where I picked that as fight of the night, and then you're like, nah, I'll give that a bonus.
I did. I gave Gaethje. I picked Gaethje for performance of the night.
Oh, that's right. And he didn't win it, so that's why I win. Makes sense.
Yep, he won fight. They took fight of the night, even though I think Oliveira Medeiros was a better fight, and frankly deserved the fight of the night. If you were just going to give one, I think that was the one that deserved it. But moving right along, both Wes and I had Holloway Aldo as our fight of the night, so that came up short. My performances were Gaethje Reyes. Wes had Ngannou Gaethje. You had Holloway Ngannou. And this is kind of bullshit because I think everyone and their mother can agree that Ngannou deserved to have performance bonus, a knockout of the night award, which means Both you and Wes should have had that on there. And frankly, Max Holloway also had a sensational performance. I think you could have had a huge night as far as performance bonuses go. You kind of got a little screwed by their decision-making, but so it goes. We all came up short in our underdog picks. I was very confident in Alistair Overeem. I was very, very wrong. Wes Riddle had Michelle Waterson as one of the only underdogs he picked on the card, maybe even the only underdog he picked on the card. Yep. She came up short. Courtney Casey was your selection, Nick. All three of us came up short, which brings us to our final bit of bookkeeping. Your two-time champ in the DraftKings category, Wes Riddle, taking down the crown with 447.5 points for his squad. He had Ngannou, Reyes, Herrig, Gaethje, Aldo, and Waterson. Not a ton of big point earners there, just the two over 3 digits, but everybody else putting in solid point totals, even the ones who came up short like Gaethje and Aldo. Even Waterson, a respectable 55 points and a loss there. My team was Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, David Tamer, Alistair Overeem, Charles Oliveira, and Tisha Torres, despite the fact that I had a couple of good winners there, just not a ton of points from my losers or my winners even really, so that kind of brought me down. Nick, you brought up the rear with 364.5 points, just 2.5 points shy of my total for the weekend, or for the Tough 18, or the UFC 218 results. You had Jose Aldo, Henry Cejudo, Justin Gaethje, Francis Ngannou, Charles Oliveira, and David Tamer. That is all our bookkeeping, sir, and we are now ready to move on to whatever this is. Swanson, Ortega. I don't even remember where this fight's happening. Fresno? Is this
Fresno? No. You are right.
So, Fresno? Okay.
Moving on to the future of 2 days from now, you have UFC Fight Night 123. Cub Swanson versus Brian Ortega, pivotal featherweight clash in the main event, the UFC's first trip to Fresno, California. We were talking off your this card. You said it's awful. I said it's not bad. I think if you dig deep a little bit and look at what some of these fights have to offer, potentially, I think we could be in for a pretty good night of fights. But on paper, not the most stacked card, but nonetheless, it's fights. And I think stylistically, some of these matchups could be pretty fun. So not a terrible card. So let's dive right in. We'll start out on the UFC Early Fight Pass prelims, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Middleweight division, we have Antonio Bragnedo, who is returning for the first time in a while, I believe.
His last fight was June of 2014.
That's right. And the reason I knew that is because he has a picture on UFC.com and he is not wearing Reebok gear. So when that is the case in 2017, at the end of 2017, the guy's been off on a layoff. He's taken on Trevin Giles, who is 1-0 in the UFC. Looked really good in his debut over the summer. I believe that took place at UFC 213. It was a first-round TKO victory. Who do you like here, Trevin Giles or the returning Antonio Bragnedo?
Give me Trevin Giles. He's a big favorite for a reason. Neto's, we just talked about it. He hadn't fought in 3 years. Coming off an injury, I don't remember exactly what it was, but clearly a serious one as it derailed his career for 3 years. And even then, his last win was 2013. He lost a split decision to Clint Hester in his last fight in the UFC back in 2014. So that's not the activity level you want. Ring rust is usually a real thing. Trevin Giles looked impressive in his debut. You just put your money behind the horse that's been competing and doing it well. So give me Trevin Giles. Let's go decision, because why not?
Yeah, I like Trevin Giles. The guy picked up a big victory in his debut. Didn't really know who he was going in, but he looked really good in that fight. He looked composed. It wasn't just like another second round TKO victory. Just for what it's worth, he defeated James Bochnovich on the UFC 213 card, Whitaker versus Romero, July 8th of this year. He looked composed. He looked actually like he had some skill, and so I'm not going to say I'm super high on the guy quite yet. He's only 1-0 in the UFC, and I'm not sure how great Bochnovich is, but I think he has some talent. Neto is coming off a 3.5-year layoff. I can't be confident or even pick him for that reason, then, I think Giles is a bit more well-rounded. He has a number of wins by TKO. He's a pretty good wrestler. He has some submissions under his belt. Nato probably has the advantage on the ground. Like, he is a decent jiu-jitsu artist. Most of his pro wins have come by way of submission, but I think, Giles might be able to keep a standing and win there. And then also he might actually be able to get Nato down and get on top. So give me Trevin Giles. I like him by a stoppage. Let's say in the second round. I think he'll make it 2 second-round TKOs in a row. Next up, we got Chris Grutzmacher taking on Davey Ramos, or I guess I know I was talking to the commentator who is making his debut this weekend, Brendan Fitzgerald, and I remember I talked to him briefly about pronunciation, and he used Ramos as an example. So I'm trying to think back to how he pronounced it. Let me tell you, it was not Davey Ramos, but nonetheless, the Tasmanian Devil taking on Grits. Who do you like here in the lightweight division?
I assume it's Davy Ramos, and I am taking Davy Ramos. He's an ADCC champion, really accomplished Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player, very good on the ground. And I don't think much of this is much harder for me to pronounce. Grutzmacher?
Yeah.
Grutzmacher, however you pronounce that. I just don't think too terribly much for him. This guy got knocked out by Artem Lobov in the Tough House back before Artem Lobov really was like, Lobov is made fun of a lot, probably unjustifiably. At this point, he's turned himself into a fairly competent fighter, but back in the Tough House, he really wasn't all that much of a competent fighter, and he knocked out Grutzmacher. So yeah, give me Davy Ramos. I'll go with submission because he is an ADCC champ. I'm going to assume he can effectuate that his what I would imagine to be a wide gulf on the floor.
Yeah, I have to agree with you here. Grutzmacher, from what I remember, is kind of gritty. I mean, his nickname is Grits. I would assume that's sort of connected. But
his name.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Because the way his name is spelled, so it makes also, I'm sure he feels that he's a gritty human being as well, but
perhaps, yeah. But as you said, the guy, he's done okay in the UFC. Just looking at his record, he's coming off the loss to Chas Skelly. Before that, he won at the Ultimate Fighter 20-something finale, December 2015. He defeated Abner Loveris. What does that mean? Nothing. That was the decision. I get mixed up with this guy and another tough guy, the guy from the ATT versus Black Zillion series. He was recently cut from Michael Graves. Yes, that's it. I always get them confused, but Michael Graves is a much better fighter than this guy.
Michael Graves was cut?
Only because he got into legal trouble. Like, he was arrested.
I was about to say, he's a way better fighter than Grutzmacher. That's kind of bullshit if he got cut there.
So yeah, Michael Graves, last time I heard, he was fighting overseas somewhere. But yeah, give me Ramos here. Like him quite a bit. I know former co-host of Before the Battle, Daniel Levy at bestfightpicks.com. He has a max bet on Ramos, and he probably knows a bit more about this matchup than I do. So I'll tail him. Give me Davy Ramos. Really confident. Pretty confident. He's a great grappler. Grutzmacher, I'm not sure, is a great fighter. So yeah, Tasmanian Devil by submission. The feature Fight Pass early prelim is at the bantamweight division. It is between Alejandro Perez and Yuri Alcantara. Two guys with quite a bit of experience, but of course that experience advantage does go to Alcantara, the Brazilian. He's been in the game for many, many years. Perez has 26 pro fights under his belt, but a bit newer to the UFC. Still has been around for, I guess, now about 2.5 years. Who do you like, your Perez or the favorite here, Alcantara?
I mean, it's hard for me to get away from Yuri Alcantara. I know he's old, but he's still wildly athletic despite his age. And basically his career has been pretty predictable. He beats the guys he's supposed to beat and loses to the very top tier guys. Really, the one exception here is the Luke Sanders leg lock, and he was losing to Luke Sanders before he kind of pulled that sort of veteran savvy maneuver out on a rising prospect who we'll talk about later on in the card. Alejandro Perez, I don't remember his fight with Andre Sukumta. Do you remember it at all?
I was camping during that fight, so no.
I don't remember.
I remember it being a iffy decision, or people saying that it was.
I mean, it was a split, so it could have been iffy. I don't really recall. And I won't be terribly astonished if he does manage to pull this fight off. Yuri Alcantara is not the most active guy on the feet. He's explosive, and what he does big and he does violently, but he has a tendency to kind of sit back around. But I think he's got a lot of physical advantages here. The athleticism, I think he's got a 4-inch reach advantage as a southpaw. That's usually a boon to be a southpaw just in general. I think he's a more explosive wrestler, more explosive athlete, and all that adds up to a win, probably by decision. I think Perez is tough enough to hang in there. I won't be super surprised if he can make the leap here. We're still talking about a guy with some upside. I think he won his season in tough or whatever. He's only 27, something like that. So he's got some upside here. But yeah, at the moment, I'm just going to stick with the better athlete, the more established veteran. And so Yuri Alcantara by decision is my pick. Also, I forgot to mention previously, Wes Riddle gave us our picks. He is lockstep with us in the first two. He has Giles and Ramos as well. He also has Alcantara. So both he and I have Alcantara. Now I'll pitch it to you to see if he makes it 3 clean sweeps to start the fight card.
Alrighty. Well, my pick again, I hate to copy you guys, is Yuri Alcantara. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I've never been all that high on Alejandro Perez. I don't know what it is about him because he's not a bad fighter, but I've never looked at him and said, oh, this guy is a future contender. I think we've seen that over the past little while. He is coming off a win, but he's been up and down. Sort of win-loss almost. Just looking at his career, he had so he won the Ultimate Fighter Latin America in November 2014 with a win over Jose Quinones. Then he lost to Patrick Williams, big upset, won 2 in a row. Then he drew with Albert Morales. I remember that, right? And then he's coming off the win over Sukumta, who we will talk about a bit later on. So not sort of maybe what some people are expecting out of Perez. I know he had a little bit of hype coming out off the Ultimate Fighter, but not tons. But I think Alcantara can dominate him on the ground specifically. Not just because Alcantara is a great jiu-jitsu artist. He's talented on the mat, but just because I think he's the bigger guy by quite a bit, and I think he's significantly stronger than Perez. I think he'll be able to get on top of Perez and land a number of takedowns. I think on the feet, Perez might have a very small advantage, despite the reach disadvantage. Alcantara isn't anything special on the feet, but I think this will mostly be taking place on the ground, and that is where I heavily favor the Brazilian. So give me Alcantara by unanimous decision. A late submission wouldn't surprise me, though. Next up, we got Frankie Saenz, who is probably best known for his big upset win of Yuri Alcantara in early 2015. That was on the card where I think every underdog but one won, and Saenz was, of course, one of them. He's sort of fallen off since then, losing a few fights in a row. He's taken on newcomer Rob Devalashi, who is from Georgia, but not your Georgia in Europe. Who do you like here, the Georgian or the United States American?
Can you take the lead on this one for a second? Sorry, I'm caught up.
Well, I know nothing about Devalishvili. We'll go with that. Marab's easier to say. He's coming in with a 7-2 record. That's interesting. Just because having 2 losses outside of the UFC isn't the end of the world, but usually with most fighters you want to be coming in with a decent record. I just want to find his record and see how early on that came. Oh wow! Topology says this guy is fighting out of.
He's a Sarah product.
Oh, so he isn't European?
I think he is European, but I mean the same way that fucking.
It says he was born in the U.S. on Topology.
Could be.
Maybe
I don't think that's
right.
I don't think that's right because he's got Euro Sambo accomplishments on his resume. So.
I bet he was born in the U.S. but has like European heritage. Maybe his parents were born. It doesn't really matter. So those 2 losses were in the first 3 pro fights of his career. So that's not actually too bad. He's on a 6-fight winning streak. Oh, this is the guy that beat Raufeon Stotts. Do you know who Raufeon Stotts is? This guy was really hyped up. He was the victory champion. And this guy, Devalashi, knocked him out in 15 seconds last time out.
Wasn't that a looking for a fight?
No. Stotts, sure? I think was supposed to be, but he wasn't. He didn't fight on looking for a fight. He trains out of Rufus Sport.
Are you sure?
I'm
This
positive.
really feels. Not talking about Dana. Not talking about the Tuesday Night Contender. Talking about looking for a fight.
Oh, I was thinking Contender Series. Yeah,
I know the way you said that. I swear I think that Dana White went to see Stotts on looking for a fight, and then the dude got bolted, and that's
you're
why he
right. Yep,
signed
yep,
Valish.
yep. That's the fight ring in combat. That was yeah. I
Yeah,
think that
I,
Dana
I
White and
I
his crew
believe
did
that
see this one.
I'm. Well, we were talking earlier before this thing about how I don't remember shit, and I have a very vague recollection that he of seeing a thing where he was like, "I'm gonna watch this guy," and then the guy gets bolted in like 15
Yeah.
seconds, and so he signs Valishvili, however you want to
Yeah.
pronounce
So
that.
you said this guy's a former Sambo champion?
Yeah, I think he's. I think the UFC like press notes say that he's got like youth European Sambo accolades on him too. So I mean,
Well, I
he's
like
not
him
like a
here.
master of
I mean,
Sambo.
I don't know tons about him, but he's a favorite betting wise. Science is no walk in the park. I've seen, I've seen some people say good things about him. Coming off a win over Hoffy and Stotts. I know only 15 seconds, so hard to take away from much from that, but still, nonetheless, that's a big win. He was the underdog. If there were odds, which there probably weren't, but if there were, he would have been. Yeah, close fight, I think, but I think Duval. Yeah, I'm going to give it to Marab. I think he's a bit more well-rounded. Science is a good wrestler, but his strikes aren't fantastic. He's quite active on the feet, but he isn't the most accurate guy. Yeah, I'll give it to Marab. I don't really know why, but just got a gut feeling he'll take this one.
I I don't understand the line on this. Dvalishvili is a favorite, which seems baffling to me because he is not like some super hyped guy. And I don't know. I'm gonna pick Frankie Saenz here, and it's gonna be this thing that I do where every once in a while there's a fighter who I just feel like is supposed to be way better than they are for some reason. Either early on in their career, I like identify them as a guy with talent, and then they hit a big win that makes me like feel justified in that. With Signs is probably the Yuri Alcantara fight. But I think Frankie Signs is a pretty solid guy, like a pretty solid fighter. And he's too old to have upside, and that sort of was always his downfall. If he was a much younger man, he's an ASU wrestler. He's got a good, solid background for fighting, but he happens to have fought Uriah Faber, Eddie Wineland, and Augusto Mendez in his last 3 fights. And 2 of those guys are very good, historically good bantamweights. I guess that's the division we're operating in. Yeah. Um, Eddie or Jesus Christ, I'm losing it right now. Sorry. Uriah Faber and Eddie Wineland have both been around the very top of the division for a very long time. Still highly ranked guys. Augusto Mendez, that was a close fight. I think you could argue it went either way, frankly. And I have a decent amount of respect for Augusto Mendez and his grappling career. Basically, what it comes down to is I don't really know dick about this Merab Dvalishvili guy, other than the fact that he bolted a guy who people thought highly of. But we're still talking about a dude who has fought his career in Ring of Combat and CES, and beating up guys there is great. And he seems to do his job well, and he's got a solid background, but it's a big leap up. And I think Frankie Saenz is a talented guy. He's also fighting for his job. A loss here definitely gets him cut. And at 37, 38, if he gets cut from the UFC, he's probably just got to go move on, do something else different with his life. So I'm taking the underdog here. I'm taking Frankie Saenz. It's I fully expect, much the way when I picked Roxanne Modafferi last week, I fully expect to be wrong about this and to feel like I'm wrong about it. Basically, as soon as the fight starts happening, but I don't know. He's one of my guys. I believe in him. I keep backing him despite it being wrong every fucking time. And so yeah, give me Frankie Saenz on the upset here. You had Valishvili, right?
Yep.
Well, that puts me on an island then, because our esteemed colleague Wesley Riddle also has Valishvili. So yeah, I'll be by my lonesome here, and I'm okay with it.
Wesley Riddle is not our esteemed colleague because he's not here. He's just our colleague.
True. Well pointed out. Well reasoned, sir.
Next up, we go to the bantamweight division. An interesting story with this one. MMA Junkie, and then shortly thereafter, Fighting reported today that this fight between Carlos John de Tomas taking on Alex Perez, it was initially slated for flyweight. No, it's public info. But the California State Athletic Commission in plus the UFC, they collaborated and they decided to bump these guys up to the bantamweight division. And so this is now a bantamweight fight. It's being contested at 136 pounds. And the reason is because the Tomas apparently, with the California Commission's new 10-point rule, they implemented and introduced this past summer. Dave Tomas did not fall under their guidelines apparently during fight week. And interestingly enough, he did miss weight in his last fight, which might have been his debut. I think it was. And so it seems like De Tomas will probably end up, moving up to bantamweight, I would think, afterwards permanently, at least in California. Perez should be okay, but so Perez, should have no weight cutting issues, but De Tomas, none of the guys should at bantamweight now, but just for what it's worth, De Tomas would have had weight cutting issues had it been still at 125. So with that, Alex Perez, Carlos Joan, De Tomas, who do you like here?
I would love to give you guys a thorough and deep breakdown of this, but that would just be a lie. What I got for you is that Alex Perez was a Tachi champion. Tachi's a pretty solid feeder organization, particularly for the low weight class, particularly for flyweight in general. And Carlos John De Tomas lost to Naoki Inoue in his UFC debut and didn't look particularly good doing that. That's it. That's basically all I got here. I'm going to assume that the bookmakers have favorites for a reason, and that when somebody is a minus 370 favorite, that means something. And so I'm going to take Alex Perez here. I'll take him by a mid-fight stoppage just for funsies. And our colleague Wes Riddle agrees. He also has Perez.
And I want to say I saw Perez earlier on closer to 4-1. I think I saw maybe minus 410. So the guy definitely a big favorite. I think for good reason. I don't think too highly of De Tomas. Alex Perez, I don't know if you remembered or knew at all, but he won on Contender Series over the summer, and he got called up by Uncle Dana. And so he picked up a first-round submission, pretty good performance in that one. I think he's a decent fighter. I'm not sure if De Tomas is, so give me Alex Perez. I like him inside the distance. Next up, we got a pretty fun bantamweight matchup. Luke Coolhand Sanders taking on Andre Soukhamthath. And, kind of sucks for Soukhamthath because I'm not so sure he's going to win this fight. And that will bring him to 0-3 in the UFC. And both his last two fights were both losses by a split decision for what it's worth. But Andre Soukhamthath, this guy was really hyped up going into the UFC. I thought he would be able to do a lot more than he has. He was the longtime CES champion. He's known for his flying knees, a lot of interesting knockouts. We've seen from him flying, highlight reel KO type stuff from the Asian sensation. So if he loses here, I'm not sure they're going to cut him just because he's had two split decisions. Luke Sanders is a good fighter, but it really, if he does come up short, it will kind of suck. Seeing a guy like Andre Soukhamthath be 0-3 in the UFC. I'm not going to lie, that to me it would anyways. He is taking on Luke Sanders, who is favored by the betting odds makers here. Do you like Sanders, or do you think Soukhamthath picks up his first UFC victory?
I concur with your assessment that it's unfortunate for Soukhamthath because he does seem to be having kind of a bad run of things, despite being a pretty good fighter. And I think that this is just another one of those. Like, Luke Sanders is a super talented guy. This is a guy who's making waves in the division, who everybody's got their eye on to be a future title challenger some way down the line. Took a bit of a road bump in his last fight against Yuri Alcantara, but that was more of a prospect loss. He was beating Alcantara's ass, and then Alcantara jumped on a leg lock, and that was it. He got it. Good, all fair play to Alcantara there for that. But if they fought again, Luke Sanders probably going to be the favorite in that matchup for a reason. Soukhamthath is not without his benefits here. He's going to be a bigger dude. He's a rangier dude. But I just don't think he can keep up with the offense that Luke Sanders is bringing. Sanders is just a dynamic guy, tons of offense every phase of the game. He's always bringing it, and that's just going to overwhelm Andre Soukhamthath. I'm debating whether I think Sanders does get a stoppage here. Soukhamthath has proven to be a very durable guy. He's never been stopped in his career. But Luke Sanders is really, really potent offensively. I'm gonna err on the side of unanimous decision though for Luke. Does he have a nickname? There's a cool hand, Luke Sanders. Great nickname too. Jesus, way to go, Luke Sanders. Luke Sanders doing it right. Luke Sanders. And Wesley Riddle agrees with me. He also has Luke Sanders.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Give me Luke Sanders here. I'm like you on the fence between a stoppage or a decision. I'll lean with the unanimous decision. I don't think it'll be a split like Sukumta's previous two UFC victories or defeats. I think it'll be more dominant than his losses to Morales and Perez. Sanders, as you said, I think will make waves in the division. He's still young in his MMA career. He's only 11-1, not tons and tons of experience, especially in the UFC. I think he's only 2-1 in the UFC, something like that. Yeah, that sounds right. But the guy is really talented. Like this doesn't maybe give the whole story, but for what it's worth, according to UFC.com, his significant strikes landed per minute rate right now is 10.13. Again, that doesn't really, say the whole story, just because I would assume that was bumped up drastically when he fought Alcantara last time out, I would think. Maybe he had another crazy fight that I completely forget, but I don't think so. But nonetheless, he is very active on the feet. Sukumta, not nearly as much. He sort of waits and looks for the right shot, although he can be active, but we haven't seen as much activity as we'd like in his UFC run thus far. I think this is the toughest guy he's fought in UFC. He's lost to his other two opponents, so I have no reason to believe that Sukumta can get the job done here. Give me Sanders. I think he's more well-rounded. Sukumta might have an advantage on the feet as far as technique, but Sanders just throws so much more, and he arguably hits a bit harder. It will be interesting to see how he deals with the size of Sukumta. Sukumta is a slightly bigger fighter, but not by a ton, where I don't think it'll matter too much. Plus, he's pretty good at getting inside. He's a rather aggressive fighter as well. I think he can also win on the ground. I think that might actually be his best path to victory. I would suspect he stands and bangs with Sukumta for a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a takedown midway through the fight. So give me Luke Sanders by decision, perhaps a stoppage. Next up, we go to the last FS1 prelim. Women's bantamweights, Alexis Davis taking on Liz Carmouche. And actually, this is at flyweight in the new women's flyweight.
Oh, shit, this is a flyweight fight?
Either
of these women would beat Nico Montano. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's probably a fair opinion. Who do you like, your Alexis Davis, the slight underdog, or Liz Carmouche, who of course was the first Ronda Rousey victim in the UFC?
Glad that there's when we talked on your show earlier this week, we were discussing how flyweight is a division that's not good now, but it's going to get good soon. This is one of the reasons why you're going to get a lot of talent dropping down to it. Look, both Alexis Davis and Liz Carmouche are on the back end of their careers. They've seen better days in their fight careers, but both of them would beat the champion if they were fighting Nico Montano tomorrow. And both of them are gonna, be top. If they're not ranked now, and I don't think they are because I saw the rankings today.
Because they haven't fought yet.
Those rankings. Bad sign. But yeah, Liz Carmouche is going to win this fight. Basically, I think she can stay competitive on the feet and control the wrestling. I think that's really kind of pretty straightforward affair here. Alexis Davis never been a superb defensive wrestler. Mostly relies on her grappling game to kind of help her out there. But this is a woman who lost around, arguably, I guess, to Cindy Dandois, who I just have such little belief in as a fighter, and was getting hit by punches on the feet by Cindy Dandois, who may be the worst. I firmly believe is the worst striker to have ever fought in modern day UFC. So yeah, I think Liz Carmouche can stay competitive or even win exchanges on the feet, and I do think she can take Alexis Davis down with regularity. I don't think she'll be in any trouble on the floor there. So give me Liz Carmouche by decision. Oh, and Wes Riddle agrees, Liz Carmouche.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Hate to keep this boring because I know we've had similar picks for almost all of these fights. I think
You and Wes have picked the exact same fights. The only pick that is different is my Frankie Saenz pick so
right.
far.
Yeah,
Y'all
exactly.
bitches need to get a little more diversity in your game, guys.
Yeah, because with the card last month, 217, we had all the same until we changed or whatever.
Yeah, until I made us change.
Yeah. Yeah, give me Liz Carmouche. I think she's just technically a bit better. I think on the feet, she's more talented than Alexis Davis. I'm still not super in love with Davis's work on the feet. I think, she's she's a decent grappler. She can work pretty well on the ground. I'm not sure if Carmouche will let her get there. If anything, I think Carmouche might end up working a takedown here and there. I think it'd probably be smart for Carmouche to keep it standing and see, how that works out. I think it will work out quite well, actually. But if she chooses to get a takedown or try to get a takedown, I'm not so sure Davis, who does have a grappling advantage, would be able to take advantage of that. She's not particularly great off her back, so I like Liz Carmouche. I think she'll win a decision. I think Davis can make it close, but I'm leaning Liz Carmouche here, somewhat confidently by unanimous decision. Next up, we move on to the FS1 main card, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, with a bantamweight matchup between Albert Morales taking on newcomer Benito Lopez. Benito Lopez is, of course, from Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. I do not remember his fight on the Contender Series all that well. Interestingly, he won a split decision, and so I would reckon that would have been a fun fight, because otherwise he would not have gotten to call off a split decision. I feel like I should remember more about Benito, but I don't. Do you? What are your thoughts on this fight, Morales or Lopez? Who do you like here? Yeah, even on the odds as well, -110 both. So that doesn't really help us out.
No, it does not. But I don't really need help here. Benito Lopez seems like he's a team alpha male guy, which is like kind of the biggest feather in his cap there. But that camp has always been very good at harvesting talent, particularly for the lower weight divisions like this. But the problem here for me is basically experience. Benito Lopez he's got some upside to him, and he's a really young guy. He's 23, maybe 24. But he hasn't fought anybody worth shit, really. And he coming off a split decision win, whereas Albert Morales has, he's got some good, maybe not wins on his resume, but good competitive fights in general. The Andre Sukumta fight, he took a split decision over Andre Sukumta. We were just talking to that. We both respect Sukumta's game. I feel like he's gotten a little bit of short shrift here. Losing a unanimous decision to Brett Johns that's nothing. We just saw Brett Johns tap out an EBI veteran in 30 seconds with a friggin' calf slicer. Like, Brett Johns is a guy that's going places in the division very fast, and getting knocked out by Tommy Almeida is like, okay, well, that's another very hot shit prospect. Where Albert Morales seems to me to be a guy who has the talent and skills to stick around the UFC, but he's not going to beat the hot shit prospects or the really, really good guys. He's going to be a mid card guy. And then the question is Benito Lopez there? Is that where he's going to end up? And is he going to be there? Is he at that point in the stage in his career right now? I think realistically, Benito Lopez probably has more upside just in the future going forward. But at this moment in time, I'm sorely fucking tempted by Albert Morales. The one thing being his takedown defense isn't sensational. And Benito Lopez has proven to be pretty good at that. But I'm going to stick on the side of the guy who doesn't have the octagon jitters, who's been there before, who's at least a proven veteran at this point in time. I won't be at all surprised if Lopez can keep working a high rate, high volume on the feet and takedowns, which are sort of the calling card of him and in general the team alpha male style. But give me Albert Morales. Really back and forth fight. Split decision. Let's go for it. Nicholas is muted. But by the way, while he figures out how to unmute himself, because he's still there, he goes. I will also throw in that Wes Riddle has taken Lopez. So once again, I'm a voice of dissent because I think I know where Nick's going, but we'll see where he's at.
It's funny that you added Wes picks, because what I was saying as I was muted was go to Wes first. I want to see what he says. Yeah, close fight. My
Literally
gut,
dead even everywhere. Jesus.
My gut says Benito Lopez. My head kind of says Morales just because I know a bit more about him. He's decent on the feet, not tremendous on the mat. As you said, I'm not sure how much upside Morales has. I think, he has the talent to stick around. It's not like right now he's not a UFC caliber fighter. He is, but he's never going to be a top 10 guy, never going to get over that hump. And that's fine. Not everybody does. With Benito Lopez, training at Team Alpha Male is good. I think he's always getting better. Kind of worries me that, he went to a split with Steven Peterson. I'm not too familiar really at all with Steven Peterson, but I would imagine this is a small step up. So if he cannot do better against Peterson, it's tough. It's tough to say how this fight will go. This is one of the closer fights on the entire card. Really, really tough. I'm going to go Benito Lopez. I don't really know why. Just my gut feeling. I feel like he should win, but would it shock me if Morales pulls it off? I've gone against him before, the Sukumtov fight, and it has not paid off. So yeah, I'll fade Morales once again. Maybe it'll bite me in the ass yet again. But let's see, Benito Lopez by close decision. Next up, we got a middleweight matchup between Eric Anders and Marcus Perez, who is a UFC newcomer. Jed, you like Anders, who I believe is favored rather heavily, or yes, he is minus 310. Or do you like the underdog?
Did I make this up, or did Eric Anders play football for Bama?
He did. I don't know for who, but he did play football.
I'm fairly confident. I'm going to Google this right now because I am like 90% confident he played football for the University of Alabama. Yes, I am correct because I remember the last time we talked about him, I said any guy who played football for the University of Alabama is probably going to beat any random dude he's debuting against in the UFC. He happened to be debuting against Rafael Natal, who's actually like an accomplished dude, but he just came out and was just like, hey, look at me. I played football. Go the fuck to sleep, Rafael Natal. And that's about how that fight went. Marcus Peters here's what I know about Marcus Peters. He did not play football for Perez, sorry. He did not play football for the University of Alabama. And frankly, that's about all I need to know. I do know that he's a jiu-jitsu brown belt, usually likes to rely on his grappling game. Eric Anders is a much better athlete. And also, I think he's got like some minor grappling creds to his name too. I want to say that he has some Nogi like Pan Am results or some shit like that. Something that's not like amazing, but like, okay, like he can do this. He's not a fish out of water on the ground. So yeah, not really sure what Marcus Perez plans to do here other than bleed. And I suspect he'll be doing a lot of that. Eric Anders with a big time finish early on.
Yeah.
And our friend Wesley Riddle agrees.
You know that they're setting Eric Anders up for another first-round knockout here. The guy looked super impressive against Rafael Natal, probably his best performance in his life, I would think. I remember seeing his last fight, just one before UFC call-up, and it was a 5-round decision. Pretty fun, but a little sloppy. The only thing I'm worried about is Anders' cardio. He struggles to go 5 rounds. He can. It's good that he's had that experience. This, of course, isn't a 5-round. I don't think there's going to be much to be concerned about, but I figured it might be worth mentioning. His cardio is not fantastic. If Perez manages to take him deep waters, maybe get a takedown, sort of suck the life out of him, we could be in for something, an upset perhaps. But no, I mean, ultimately, Anders is one of my most confident picks of the night. Just looking at the card, it's probably honestly Eric Anders and Trevin Giles, the first fight of the night that I'm two most confident in. Overall, these fights are close. A lot of them are, anyways. So give me Eric Anders. I'm not super familiar with Perez. He seems kind of well-rounded, just judging by his, how he's won. 3 by decision, 3 by knockout TKO, 3 by submission. But yeah, give me Eric Anders, the guy I think can go pretty far in the division. And I like him by first-round knockout. Next up, we got a close lightweight matchup between Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman and Daryl the Saint Horcher, a.k.a. victim of Khabib. Who do you like here, Horcher or Holtzman?
Give me hot sauce here. Scotty Holtzman. I just think he's got a little more offense in the tank here. Daryl Horcher's not a bad fighter at all. He did get a little bit short shrift by coming in short notice against Habib and then getting just fucking dick stomped. But he comported himself fairly well before he did get his dick stomped in. And that's against probably the best lightweight on the planet of Earth. So not too shabby for him. But I'm not a huge, don't want to make it out like I'm a huge Scott Holtzman fan. But I think his losses are mostly defensible. Not a huge fan of losing to Drew Dober in general. I think that kind of puts a ceiling on you, but I think that ceiling is still probably above where Daryl Horcher lives. But he's just more offensive. He's got more volume on the feet, and he wrestles. We haven't really seen Daryl Horcher do a lot other than defend takedowns. He's fine at that, not sensational at it. I mean, some of that gets screwed by the fact that Habib is Habib, but still.
I want to say Horcher scored takedowns in his last fight. I could be totally mistaken.
His last fight was against
Devin Powell.
Yeah. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I'm not going to pretend like I super remember that fight all that well. I just don't recall.
It was not a good fight.
A ton of time on top. But yeah, Scott Holtzman, I think he can mix it up with takedowns. If he's successful, great. If he's not, still gives him something to think about. And just on the feet, he just throws more. He's just there he's creating more offense, and 9 times out of 10, that's what ends up winning the fight. And it's not like Daryl Horcher is some outlandish finisher. He's not Anthony Pettis, who, it doesn't matter if somebody outworks them, they can all of a sudden just crack off a violent body kick and then guillotine choke them. It's not really his game. So give me Scotty Holtzman with the process. And Wesley Riddle agrees. Scott Holtzman. Me and Wesley Riddle agreeing a lot today, and you and Wesley Riddle have agreed on every single fight, just so we're throwing it out. I have differentiated twice from you two. Y'all are in sync right here. Just taking all the favorites because you're cowards.
What do we do if we're all the same throughout the entire card? Do we?
I'm going to make you pick somebody else somewhere different because Wes has already submitted his picks and he's not here to make him pick somebody else.
That's not fair. I'm not showing up next week.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I knew I wouldn't win that one.
I'm the picks king. I make the rules here right now. You want to make the rules, take the title from my head. But until then, if you share the same picks with him for the next 4 fights, then you're gonna have to pick somebody different somewhere. Yeah. I'll make you pick Lopez, or I'll make you pick Morales or some shit.
All right. Well, give me Scott Holtzman again. Agreeing with Wesley Riddle. We'll wait out for the next 3 and see, and hope to God that he's picking someone I'm not. Otherwise, I don't know. Kick him off the show. Sounds like a plan.
I'll make him change a pick too, because I know a pick that he would change, because we talked about it beforehand. So I know a guy that he would change if I was forcing him. So I'll make him make his change. But I'm going to make you make your change too. Nobody gets to keep the same shit if you guys share.
And I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the main event, Cub Swanson and Brian Ortega. I glanced at you guys.
We're not talking about the main event. You were incorrect. But
then I don't know what you're talking about. But I'm picking Scott Holtzman here, as I said. I think he's the better fighter. I don't think too much of Daryl Horcher. Prompts him for stepping up on Khabib or against Khabib on short notice in April of last year. But he got destroyed in that fight. Let's be honest. But I guess making it the second round, good on him. But his last fight against Devin Powell, not super impressive. Like, he went to a split decision with Devin Powell, and Devin Powell is a bad fighter. So I'm not sure really where that ranks Daryl Horcher. I'm not sure if it's quite above the line of good and bad. Scott Holtzman is slightly above that line. He's a decent fighter. He can put his punches together quite well. His wrestling's okay. But I think ultimately he is just a bit more technically sound, and he lands a lot more. He throws a lot more. Just comparing their significant strike rates, landed per minute, 4.55 for Hot Sauce, 1.82 for Horcher. Horcher, not much of a banger. He's a gritty guy. He's tough, so I don't think Holtzman puts him away, but I think Holtzman is able to outstrike him and maybe even land a takedown. But I think mostly this will be a stand-up fight that does favor Holtzman. So give me Scott Holtzman by unanimous decision. Next up, we move on to the fight that means probably the second most as far as high stakes. Definitely an interesting one for the 135-pound division. We got number 7 Marlon Rice taking on number 8 Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling. Jed, do you like Brazilian or the American? Magic versus Funkmaster. Who is your pick?
When we talked on your show earlier this week, the MMA Circus, shout out, plug. I think we established that I was going to take who did I say? I was going to take Marlon Moraes there, right? Felt like that's what I said.
Maybe.
I believe that's what I said, but I then went and watched some tape, and I feel completely differently now. I'm taking Aljamain Sterling. I actually feel pretty good about it too. Couple of factors here. One, Sterling's big issue historically has been his striking. I think we've actually seen that improve pretty markedly in his last few fights. It seems like the work with Sarah Longo, I know that's been his camp forever, seems like everything's starting to click. And you see this with fighters who will have real struggles in one area, but then after just enough gym hours, they suddenly everything falls into place. I think we've started to see him play to his strengths a little more, stay long, kick on the outside because he's very long for the division already. And that's turned into an effective striking game to complement the fact that he's got a really good grappling game. Pretty solid takedown artist, not a tremendous offensive wrestler, but a good enough one. And when he gets on top, very good at control. Just really solid guy all around. He seems like he might finally be growing into the fighter that he was sort of projected to be early on in his career before he started having those speed bumps. The loss to Caraway, the loss to Assunção, just kind of the malaise and not looking sensational in general. Marlon Moraes is a guy who arguably beat Rafael Assunção. I don't agree. I thought he lost to Rafael Assunção. I also thought he lost to John Dodson. But he managed to take one of those fights on two of the judges' scorecards. So that's enough. But here, my issue with Moraes is twofold. Well, threefold, I guess. One, he's giving up physical advantages to Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is much longer. He's got a bigger reach. He's just a better athlete. Two, Marlon Moraes is really content not to throw offense. He's content to kind of sit back and let a fight come to him, which is why he's been on the wrong end of some decisions, by why he's in close fights that maybe he could do better in. And letting Aljamain Sterling kind of dictate the offense means he's just going to sit out there and let Aljamain Sterling kick his legs for 15 minutes, and you don't win decisions that way. And the third factor is really this kind of quick turnaround. We saw Marlon Moraes, was it even a month ago? I don't know the exact.
November 11th, I think.
Is that the date? Was it November 11? For the Poirier Pettis fight card?
That's right. Yeah.
It was November 11th. So not even a month ago, he turned around and fought again. And I know we've been talking about the Michael Bisping turnaround. There is a substantive difference between coming off a knockout loss and coming off a, not that offensive heavy decision win.
It's not even close.
No, but I still think it's a really bad idea to have a turnaround that short, because prime athletes prepare their body to peak correctly. And when you hear Bisping talk about his loss, he doesn't really the loss to Gastelum. And granted, this is Bisping, he doesn't talk about it being a problem that, he had just got knocked out and brain was rattled and stuff, though I'm sure that is a factor. I firmly believe that. His whole thing, his belief that it was a bad decision is, I spent all these months preparing for Georges St-Pierre, and my body had already physically peaked, and I had already put in all these rounds and was just kind of worn down. And so then when fight night came in Shanghai, I couldn't get up. There was no pop. I had no chutzpah to the night because I was just kind of mentally worn down from preparing for the last several months for this fight. And I feel like that plays here, At best, Marlon Moraes went home, had a weekend with his family, and then kind of turned around, was like, okay, I'm going to get right back into full fight mode, full fight camp. And that's not conducive to long-term success. I think factor that in on top of everything else going here, the other advantages I see for Sterling. I feel pretty good about Aljamain Sterling taking a decision here. It might be close. Maybe Moraes wins around, but I think Sterling's going to be able to dictate the striking and the grappling and just impose himself and his game plan on Marlon Moraes here. Give me Aljamain Sterling with a decision. And this time, for the third time this evening, me and Wes Riddle disagree. He is going the other way. He is taking Marlon Moraes, which leaves you to arbitrate. Are you going to side with me, or are you going to side with Wesley Riddle? Where is it going to be?
Me and Wes are two smart cookies. Give me Magic Moraes. I kind of hate this pick now because we're kind of getting close and down to the wire as far as the possibility that I will have to change a pick and that he will have to change a pick. We have two more fights to go after this one, and Wes and I have to differ, or else bad things will happen. and Jed will make us change just so he can.
We're here for the people. We're trying to make an interesting show, not just have you be like, yeah, everybody just take all the favorites on the card. Okay, see you next week. Anyone can tell you. Anyone can tell you that all the favorites are going to win. Literally anyone can do that.
Underdogs can win too.
What? I didn't hear you. Kind of cut out there.
That's fine. Wouldn't pick Wi-Fi. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. So, anyways, Marlon Rice, I like him here, but not a lot. I think you brought up a lot of valid points, particularly about the striking. But hold on, Sterling's striking game tons. Like, he did good work against Hennenbrow, and I'm an idiot for picking Hennenbrow because I initially was picking Sterling, and then everyone else was like, "Oh, this is a great matchup for Hennenbrow. Pick Hennenbrow." I'm like, "Okay," and I picked Hennenbrow, and it didn't pay off. I think Marlon Rice is too good of a striker to lose in the striking department to Aljamain Sterling. I know size-wise, this is big for Sterling. The guy is super lanky for the division. He should be able to work leg kicks against Rice. He started to really find his own on the feet. And that's something that is great because that's sort of been his big downfall almost. He just hasn't had that great of striking, but I think we're finally starting to see sort of him creep into, the striking department or whatever you want to say. But nonetheless, Rice has he's just more of a natural fit on the feet, I feel. Harder. He closes the distance quite well. He can be inactive at times, as you said. Sterling works a bit more on the ground, on the feet. Landed per minute, significant strike rate, 2.97 from Rice, 3.63 for Sterling. That doesn't mean a whole lot just because that's so close. Take it for what it's worth. Just in general, I think that does paint a good idea as to the fact that Sterling does throw more than Rice does. But when Rice throws, I feel like there's usually a bit more impact. I feel like the opponents often feel it a little bit more than when Sterling lands something of his own, whether it's a punch or a kick. Tough fight to call, honestly. I really could see Sterling win this one. He's been getting better at Serra-Longo. He's finally come into his own. But I got to go with Marlon Rice. I think he gets the job done. I think this will mostly be a stand-up affair. I wouldn't blame Sterling for trying to get a takedown. I think that actually could work out. So if I was Sterling, I mean, standing back and landing leg kicks is a good option as well. But I think he might be able to get Rice down as well. But Rice is no slouch on the ground whatsoever. And so now that I say that and think about it, might not be super effective. We've seen Sterling get out grappled, of course, in the Brian K-Way fight. So really anything can happen. Sterling's been up and down, but as I said, he started to come on to a bit of a winning streak. I just think Rice is just technically a bit more sound than Aljamain Sterling. I think he's a bit more confident on the feet. So give me Marlon Rice. I think it'll be another close fight, maybe a split decision. On paper, this is fun. I don't know if it'll play out as a super entertaining matchup. I think it'll be a lot of stick and move from both fighters, a lot of or both of them not really wanting to engage to full potential, but nonetheless, so interesting matchup on paper. Give me Marlon Rice in a close fight, decision, maybe even a split. We move on to the co-main event of the evening. Featherweights, number 15, Jason the Kid Knight taking on unranked Gabriel Mowgli Benitez. Entertaining clash at 145 pounds. Jed, who do you like?
I think there's only one answer to this, and my breakdown is going to be exceedingly simple. Hick Diaz is fucking awesome, so I'm going to pick Hick Diaz here, and I think that it's pretty clear he's way more offensive on the feet and way more active on the floor, on top or on bottom. This dude is going to be throwing everything and the kitchen sink, and then if the kitchen sink doesn't do it, he'll take off his pants and throw those too, because this motherfucker don't give two shits. Jason Knight is awesome. He ran into both a bad style matchup and just an impossibly difficult fight for a guy who's still really young in the game, who's still really developing his skills in Ricardo Lamas. But before then, there's a reason people got excited about Hick Diaz, and it was because he came into the UFC and started beasting on dudes. The Jim Ayler split decision was not awesome. And losing to Tetsuya Kawajiri, like, again, it's a horrible style matchup for him. But then, choking out Alex Caceres, busting up Chad Skelly to the body like a boss. Like, this guy can fight his ass off. And I take nothing away losing to Ricardo Lamas, who is one of the 5 best featherweights on the planet and has been for, feels like a decade at this point. Gabriel Benitez, just not on that level. Not a bad fighter, AKA guy. But, I mean, look, his wins are who beat Sam Cecilia? Like, okay. It's not – Andre Feely put him on a stretcher early on. I think in the first round in their fight. I think Jason Knight's going to bust him up something fierce. Give me Jason Knight with a TKO stoppage in the second round. Oh, and Wes Riddle agrees. He also has Jason Knight. Are you going to make it 3 for 3? Because that means in the last fight of the night, you got to pick one to see, or I'm going to make you pick somebody different.
Oh, man. Give me Jason the Kid Knight. Give me Hick
Down
Diaz.
to the wire. Okay.
What's that?
We are down to the wire on you and Wes Riddle, huh? Okay.
Down to the wire, indeed. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good fight for Jason Knight. I literally almost said Jason Diaz, but yeah, Jason Knight. I think Benitez has the potential to make it kind of close. The guy's super sharp on the feet. He's not a bad grappler, but I think Knight is sort of just more crafty. I think his submission game is a lot better than Benitez's. It's less straightforward. He's super funky on the ground. You don't really know what's coming. And his stand-up game is getting real good. It's not great, but it's getting a lot better than we've seen. I looked to the Dan Hooker fight. That was really important, and an impressive performance from Jason Knight a little while back. Coming off a loss to Ricardo Lamas, that was a bad loss, but no shame in that. As you said, Lamas has been a top contender for years and years and years. And Knight hung in there as much as he could, as long as he could. He hung tough. He didn't give up, but ultimately enough was enough. The referee had seen enough, and Lamas got the TKO. Vicious stoppage, vicious performance. But yeah, I think Knight is mostly just on a different level than Benitez. Benitez is good, but Knight is just a bit more good. I can't say he's great. Like he's not quite there. But I think the guy has some potential in the future. He's still pretty young from what I know. I want to say he's like 25, 26. Yeah, he's 25 years old. So that guy's going to be around for a while. I won't be surprised to see him in the top 10. He's already number 15. That's off a loss. So, yeah, give me Jason Knight. I think he stops Gabriel Benitez. I think this would be a pretty vicious performance. Could end up being Fight Night. We'll get to that a bit later. But I think Knight does stop him. Let's go second round. How would you say Knight will stop him, TKO or submission?
I said just in the second round. I didn't pick a method.
I'll go out on a bigger limb and take a bigger chance than you, Sir Jed. Give me Knight by second round TKO.
That's basically exactly what I said. But okay, that's not really much. But we moved ourselves on to the final. Cub Swanson, Killer Cub Swanson, taking on Brian Ortega, T-City, Triangle City. Brian, the third round submission machine. Ortega. I guess I'll lead us off since I've been leading us off the whole evening. I guess first I'll say Wes Riddle has picked Cub Swanson, a slight underdog here. I think they're actually close to even or even in most books, but a couple books have Cub Swanson as a very slight underdog. I suspect he will probably get pushed to an even bigger underdog come fight time. This is a straight up old guard versus new guard fight. We did talk about this fight on the MMA Circus earlier this week, and my feelings have not changed on this fight. It's really tough for me to ever pick Brian Ortega. If I were to bet every fight that Brian Ortega was in, I would probably bet against him every time, and I would end up losing a lot of money over his career because he's a slow starter and he's a dude who doesn't he doesn't start fighting until he kind of has to. And basically all of his UFC fights, frankly, the reason he has so many third-round wins is because he doesn't do anything in the first two, and he's losing to people who are way shittier than him. And he sits on the stool, and his team's like, hey, man, you're losing. You should really go try and fight now. And then he's like, oh, shit, I have to go try? All right, I'll go try. I'm just going to quickly finish this fucking dude in front of me. And if you fought like that all the time, this is a guy who's going to be fighting for a title. Maybe, Max Holloway is Max Holloway, so I'm not sure that I'd ever think Brian Ortega was going to beat him, but I'd be more interested in it if he didn't start so goddamn slow every single time out. Against Cub Swanson, that doesn't hurt him as much. Cub is also not a huge early starter. I think Artem Lobov took the first round against Cub when they fought earlier this year.
Yeah.
And then he kind of picked it up as it went on. But the decision for me here really is the inconsistency with Ortega really makes me feel a lot of trepidation in picking him. And on top of that, this is just an enormous jump up in competition for him. Like, his best win is, I guess, Clay Guida. And if you think Clay Guida and Cub Swanson are any semblance of the same like level of fighter, you've lost your fucking mind.
His best win is Renato Moicano.
I don't think that's accurate.
Disagree. Considering Moicano had just defeated Jeremy Stevens.
I think Moicano. I think Clay Guida is a better name to have on your scalp.
Better names, but skill-wise, I think Moicano, as of right now, is the better fighter, and that actually means more as far as skill. But yeah, Clay Guida is obviously way more,
Clay Guida
name
is
than
Moicano. Fighter.
Oh, of course.
Not than Moicano is. You might be right, I guess, on being a better fighter than Clay Guida. But like Cub Swanson is not Clay Guida. He's not Renato Moicano. He can jaw people with ferocity on the feet. He is going to throw more volume, have much better defense than Brian Ortega, who's kind of secretly very bad about getting hit in the face. Brian Ortega is probably not going to be able to just take Cub Swanson down. Cub doesn't have great defense. Brian Ortega is not really a great wrestler. He kind of gets his finishes, his triangles in transition, and I don't suspicion that Cub Swanson is going to be busting him up on the feet and then shoot a takedown for no fucking reason at all. Look, if Brian Ortega just comes out and makes a huge leap, he's a young guy with clearly a ton of talent on him. If he comes out and makes a leap and just taps out Cub Swanson and blows Cub Swanson's doors off with a Jose Aldo double clutch knee, I'm not going to be super surprised on it. But I'm gonna stick with the veteran, with the guy who I know what I'm getting, and what I'm getting is one of the 5 to 7 best welterweights. 7 best featherweights in the UFC. One of the best ones that's ever done it. Time in, time out for a decade almost, and I think that he's still showing new wrinkles, still showing new tools. My big concern for Cub is getting on the floor. He's despite having a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, he has never looked super confident on the floor, on the bottom particularly. And Brian Ortega, for whatever foibles he has certainly shown a lethality on the ground. So if this does end up on the floor, Cub Swanson is in danger. Hot lava needs to get the fuck out of there. But I think that he can probably keep it on the feet for the most part and just use his range and his superior volume, power, and striking to, we haven't seen Brian Ortega get bolted, so I'm going to suspicion that Cub just kind of takes a decision over the course of 5 rounds. But he's got the power to really kind of put anybody away if he's trying for it. So I won't be super surprised if he knocks out Brian Ortega. But the end result is my 4th underdog pick of the card, Cub Swanson, by decision over Brian T. City Ortega.
Well, and Wes and I going to have to change the pick, or am I out on an island? We'll all be good. What do you think?
I suspicion that you.
You suspicion? I'm not sure that's how you use the English language, but okay.
I suspicion that you are going to take Cub Swanson.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to the main event for our picks. Give me Brian T. City Ortega. Wes and I are off the hook. We are good. We disagree. Finally. But I'm still going all favorites because as of right now,
I will let it be known that you are going completely chalk on the card.
Yes. Yes, I am. It's a close fight, so I'm probably going to end up going, 7-5. That doesn't actually add up because there's 13 fights, I believe, but 8-5, 7-6, something like that. But give me Brian Ortega. As you said, this is sort of new guy, old lion, or whatever they say. Old hip. Vitor Belfort, the old guy, whatever.
Young dinosaur, old lion.
I almost said old hippo. That is just terrible.
Well, hey, hippos are the most dangerous animals in Africa.
They are. Yeah, so give me Brian Ortega here. Not confident, super close fight. Would never bet really any chunk of money on this. Never mind a large uh, part of my life savings that add up to about $50 in Canadian. Give me Brian Ortega though. This is a close fight. I don't know. I literally have said, give me Brian Ortega 3 times, and this is a close fight 3 times. Let me just try and get into this. Brian Ortega obviously better on the mat. Cub Swanson has the advantage on the feet. Really comes down to where this fight takes place. Super concerned about the first 2 rounds for Ortega because, as you said, he doesn't fight for 2 rounds, and then when he has to, he does, and he ends up, pulling off a super incredible highlight reel stoppage. That Diego Brandao submission at the beginning of 2016. That was one of the best submissions of the year. The Clay Guida was super cool. Even his last submission over Hanato Moicano, considering how quickly it all happened, was fun as well. He might have been down on the scorecards in that one too. It's concerning, but this is a 5-round fight. He doesn't need to win one of the first 2 rounds and then go. If he doesn't pull off a stoppage, technically, going by the fact that there's 5 rounds, he could lose the first 2, win the last 3, and win the fight. It's hard to count on that because Cub Swanson is he's a veteran. He's one of the best in the featherweight division still. He has been for many, many years, just like Ricardo Lamas and Frankie Edgar and Chad Mendes, for what it's worth. But I feel like the time, I thought Cub Swanson was on decline 2 years ago after losing to Edgar and Max Holloway. That clearly wasn't really the case. He's come back and won 2 or 3 or 4 in a row. Hakran Diaz, Tatsuya Kawajiri, the Doo Ho Choi fight of the year last year, and most recently Artem Lobov. So he's definitely not done, but I think we start to see maybe on this fight a slow yet steady decline from Killer Cub. I won't be surprised if that is the case. This is the fight where Brian Ortega finally reaches title contention. This is the case where Cub Swanson leaves title contention for good, which is unfortunate because I remember there was a point 2 or 3 years ago when he deserved a title shot against Jose Aldo, never got it in the UFC anyways. But stylistically, it really could go either way. Swanson has always had decent takedown defense. Like he's not a guy to get grinded out necessarily. Frankie Edgar put the wood to him, but that's Frankie Edgar. Brian Ortega isn't great with the takedowns. He's just a really good grappler. If he finds his way to the ground and on top of you or on bottom, he'll probably sink something in. Working with Henry Gracie down in California, the guy's really talented on the mat. It's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how he looks in a 5-rounder, whether he starts even slower, whether he has realized that he starts slow and actually picks up the pace early on, whether he never finally. There's so many variables just because Ortega is naturally a slow starter. But I think we sort of see the same thing. I think the first 2 rounds might, he might take them off a little bit. Cub Swanson probably pieces him up on the feet a little bit. But I think come to the championship rounds, even number 3, I think that's when Ortega starts getting Swanson down to the mat. I think he starts getting in top control, not necessarily threatening with the submission quite yet, but I think just sort of racking up those points on DraftKings with takedowns and reversals and advancements on the ground and things like that. I think he starts to take over late, which is weird because Swanson, I would think would be better in a 5-rounder than Ortega because you've never seen Ortega in a main event in the UFC, but that's my gut feeling. I think it sort of plays in that way. Swanson starts to fade a little bit, or more so Ortega just starts to take over. I actually like him by inside the distance. I like Brian Ortega by a late submission, probably in the 4th round, maybe the 5th. It's going to kind of come down to the wire. If he doesn't, pull off a submission, the decision could definitely go Swanson's way depending on the first 3 rounds. But give me Brian Ortega. Not confident. Would never bet really anything on Brian Ortega. Honestly, surprised he's a favorite. I know it's super close odds-wise, but give me Brian Ortega, biggest win of his career. And let's go 4th round submission.
For the record, the fight I was going to make Wes change to, he had considered changing to Aljamain Sterling over Marlon Moraes. So that was going to be the fight I made him change to.
And that's the one I would have changed as well. Jesus Christ.
Good gracious. Well, let's move to bonuses, and you can lead us off since you never lead us for anything. So lead us off on bonuses, and then I'll give us Wes's and then mine.
Bonuses kind of tricky here. Fight of the night. This is an interesting one.
You can't take the main event.
Why's that?
Because Wes already took it. I'm gonna make a rule. We can't have the same bonuses. We can have one bonus of the 3 bonus picks, 4 bonus picks, because I'm gonna just start counting the underdogs bonuses. Of our 4 bonus selections, you can only overlap once. That's gonna be my new rule. Get diversity out there.
Give me fight of the night for Knight Benitez.
That's my fight of the night. God damn it.
I love when you introduce the rule, it screws you over instantly. That is fantastic. I think with this one, Benitez survives just enough time-wise where it's sort of back and forth, kind of fun. Could definitely see Knight stopping him early, but I think throughout 2 rounds, this will be back and forth and quite the war. So give me Knight Benitez for my fight of night. For performances, kind of a tricky one. Trying to think here. I'm going to go Eric Anders and Trevin Giles.
Okay, an underdog.
Underdog. Well, I'm going all chalk. So let's see here.
Sucks to be you.
Let's see who has the better chance. I mean, it's hard not to go Cub Swanson. I assume all of you guys are going that for underdog, or at least one of you. I assume you're going Aljamain Sterling. I'm gonna screw you over probably again. Give me Aljo Sterling.
You don't screw me over because I already picked mine, so I should just make you change all of yours, frankly. Because my picks are Fight of the Night, Knight Benitez. My performances are Anders and Sanders, partly because it rhymes and partly because I think both of them will do great things. And underdog is Sterling. Wes Riddle's picks are Swanson, Ortega, Anders, and Knight. And then Swanson is his underdog pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 2 underdog picks are the ones we covered, Swanson, Sterling, anyone else. And maybe not.
I could have Science or Morales too, because I went lots of underdogs.
It's true, but
I'm not a chalky bastard like y'all.
For me, as far as the guy who's picking all chalk, I think the 2 closer fights are probably that one. Morales is a good one as well. So anyway, I'm going Sterling. You're going. What was your underdog? Are you just
my underdog Sterling?
Okay, all right.
Because I'm actually pretty confident he beats Marlon Moraes. I'm not nearly as confident in Cub Swanson.
Right.
I mean, I'm a little bit confident in Cub Swanson, but I'm not nearly as confident in Frankie Saenz or Albert Morales. I'm just taking them because I can't feel confident picking the other guys.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we just have DraftKings.
Yeah, just DraftKings. Wes Riddle's DraftKings team is Cub Swanson, Aljamain Sterling, Perez, Giles, Dvalishvili, and Anders. What about you, Nikolai?
I am pulling up my DraftKings team as we speak.
Well, as you pull up your DraftKings team, I will say that Wesley and I share 3 DraftKings squad members. I also have Cub Swanson. I also have Aljamain Sterling. I'm picking both of those to win. Wes isn't picking Sterling to win. Just throwing it out there. My pick, having Sterling on my squad, a little more honest than Wes's. And Eric Anders, all 3 of us are picking Eric Anders. All 3 of us are picking him to win big. I think all 3 of us probably going to end up having him on our teams. I round out my team with Albert Morales, another underdog that I'm picking. Hick Diaz, Jason Knight. You and I discussed it. We think he's going to put on potentially a fight of the night performance, certainly a fight with a lot of offense, a lot of points scored. And then Frankie Saenz, the other underdog. So I'm all 4 underdogs on my squad are on my team. I'm not in love with having Albert Morales on my team, frankly. Even if he wins, I don't think it's going to be a lot of points. But to get the rest of my team, he's kind of the only guy that fit that I thought had a good chance, or at least had a chance to win. Otherwise, I'd have to be taking somebody like Carl de Tomas or whatever, and that ain't doing nobody no favors. So that's my squad. Nikolai, have you found your team?
Yes, my team. So we share a couple. We have Eric Anders.
Yeah, I suspected that we would have Eric Anders.
And so we all have Eric Anders, right?
Yeah, all of us have Eric Anders.
And perhaps to your surprise, we all have Aljo Sterling. So
no, I mean, he's cheap, so I sort of suspicioned everybody would put him on there too.
I think with Aljo Sterling, even in defeat with the leg kick specifically, he picks up a solid maybe 35 to 40 points, maybe even more. And if he pulls off the win, great. So that's sort of my reasoning there. And he's cheap.
Cost a lot.
The other big underdog I have is Gabriel Benitez. The guy's the cheapest on the card. I think he's sort of undervalued. I don't love it because I'm picking Jason Knight inside the distance, but with it being my fight tonight, I do think Benitez picks up enough points to make it sort of worth the 6,900 price tag on him. But that also allowed me to have Eric Anders, who's one of the bigger favorites on the card, and then also Trevin Giles was on my card as well.
I figured you'd have Giles too.
And I rounded out with another big favorite in Alex Perez and a mid-price guy in headliner Brian Ortega. I think Eric Anders and Trevin Giles, as I said earlier, my two most confident picks of the night. So like that a lot. Alex Perez, I think, does get a stoppage. He's pretty expensive like that. Brian Ortega, this is an iffy one. He's 8,100, not super expensive, so not terrible. But even if he wins, like there's a good chance he doesn't, get that many points just because of how inactive he can be. So a little concerned. Like it's going to be tough to get Swanson down. So that could he could win and still only get, even throughout 5 rounds, still only get like 60 points. I could see that happening. So, and then as I said, Benitez and Sterling. So that's my team. And that does it for the show. I think we got everything covered, right?
Before we leave, though, there is one important thing that we didn't discuss. It's important. There's another title fight going on Saturday. It will be taking place in Florence, Italy. Rafael Carvalho defending the Bellator middleweight title against Alessio Sakara. Just give me your winner.
Carvalho.
Ooh, you're not feeling whatever the fuck Sakara's nickname is. I don't know, the dude who lost to Houston Alexander. That's what I'll always think of Alessio Sakara as.
No, I honestly, I get mixed up with Sakara and John Alessio because they share a name. What?
I want to say that Alessio Sakara is Legionarius. Am I correct? Yeah, spiked it. Man, I've been watching MMA way too fucking long. Also, the return of Brandon Gertz, who we last saw Derek Campos knee Nike Air Jordan symbol into his head, like one of the most vicious cuts you've ever seen. He has this gnarly scar. Bellator 2.
Yes, I saw that.
But yeah, so I think you're right. I would never pick Alessio Sakara, even though they're fighting in Florence, Italy. But yeah, that's it. I just wanted to throw that out just because I'll be working that card. So in general, I care a little more about it in general because now apparently all I do is work the Bellator beat. I'm our Bellator beat writer. I'm cool with it.
Run down your DraftKings one more time. I just want to sort of compare. So we Swanson, have Anders and Sterling.
We have Anders and Sterling, correct. I have Swanson. You have Ortega. I have Morales, Knight, and Science.
Yeah, considering so the big difference makers besides the main event would be Prez and Giles versus you have two underdogs, Morales and Science. And
I don't love my team. I like my team because I'm picking.
We don't share is you have Science and
Science, Morales, Knight, Anders.
Oh, Knight, right. So we do share, right.
Like, Knight and Anders are going to get points. I think Swanson is okay. But, like, I like my team because I picked 4 underdogs, so I got to put all those on my thing. But, like, Cub Swanson isn't really an underdog in DraftKings. He costs the exact same amount of money as Brian Ortega.
The thing was we have 2 the same, and then we share 2 fights, 2 different opponents, Ortega versus Swanson, Benitez versus Knight. And I think one of those, we'll get one each on those. I think they'll share similar points most likely. Although I think Knight actually gets more than Ortega, and then it comes down to Giles and Prez versus your Science and
Morales. I don't like having Morales on my team. If I can,
I like Giles. Giles and Prez, are 2 of the most expensive guys versus 2 underdogs. So I'm liking my team all right.
Yeah, it's not a bad team. If Morales can win, then I'm feeling much happier about it. But we'll see. I'm not against it. I suspect I will either win or come in last. It'll be one or the other. I don't think I'm going to have it'll be competitive. I'm either going to win by a lot or lose by a lot. That's kind of my thought here.
I'm happy though that we all share Aljamain Sterling just because I didn't want to be on my own with that. But anyways,
we're just cowards and won't pick him.
That is it for episode 92 of Before the Battle UFC Fresno edition. Thank you all for watching. We do appreciate it. If there is anybody still listening or watching, we appreciate it. Jed, let everybody know where they can find you on social media, where they can find your mixed martial arts coverage, and anything else you got to plug.
You can find my writing at MMAfighting.com. You can find me on social media on Twitter at Jed Meshew. Give me a follow on there. You see all the writing, everything else I'm doing. I have a podcast. It's called The Naked Truth. I co-host it with Nikolai's colleague, the Naked Gambler, writer over at Bloody Elbow. But we were supposed to have an episode this week, but it appears that the audio is unsalvageable, which is unfortunate because it was a good episode. We talked a lot of things, had a lot of fun. But so check back with us next week. Hopefully then maybe my co-hosts can get some better equipment and not really leave us in a lurch in this way. But other than that, that's all. Appreciate had fun. Appreciate having me again.
See, we're all on levels here. Wesley Riddle doesn't show up to Before the Battle, but you don't re-record when your show goes bad or the audio goes funky. That's happened to me. The Clown Kid and I have recorded hour and a half, 2 hour shows, and then we lose it. It happened once or twice, and I would go back and re-record some stuff. Maybe not a full 2 hour show, but I'd get something out there. You got to give back to listeners, Jed.
I can't do it. It already took, it's too much of my time already gone. Besides, it's not that important. We're not that exciting, so they'll just wait around until next week, and it'll be okay.
Yeah, if you had, a show every week, made a regular thing, maybe you'd go far, but
I'm cool with where I'm at.
Are you, though?
I'm writing for the biggest site in the world. I think I'm doing okay.
Perhaps. I got to give, yeah, I mean.
The award-winning two-time. the two-time.
Been a while since we brought that up. Well, anyways, you guys can find me on the Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find my writing over at what is not the biggest MMA website, but very, very close to being the biggest MMA website, bloodyelbow.com. Check it out. That'd be awesome. I should have some interview pieces up. I'm thinking the weekend. Tomorrow I'm probably going to write a couple. I haven't been writing. I wrote a ton. I had a ton of articles up the first 4 days of the month. The past few days, this past week, I haven't written much, but should have some stuff up, this weekend, early next week, probably. All of my interviews on this YouTube channel, here mostly exclusively. Sometimes it'll be on Bloody Elbow as well. Check out my other podcast, The MMA Circus, hosted usually with Andrew, but sometimes with this man here, Jed Meshew. That was the case this past weekend. Or week, I should say, episode 140. We talked a little bit about this card, not very much, but mostly focused on Max Holloway's victory over Jose Aldo, the rest of 218, and a little bit of tough finale as well. You can check out Beyond Combat, hosted by myself every 2 weeks. Next week, we have, I'm thinking the guest is finalized. It's not quite yet there. He hasn't responded to me today, so maybe he's just, ducking the show or doesn't want to do it. I can't blame him, but we'll stay tuned for that. That'll be next week. That's pretty much everything. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it and enjoyed the fights in Fresno on Saturday night.
Love you guys.